I'm super thrilled you're here. I really am. This is a great group of people, very eclectic, which I always appreciate. But anyway, my name is Mark Moyer. Welcome to the Clubroom. It's brought to you by the Win Again Academy. And just a couple quick words about me, although I'm never quick about me, but I'll try. I've been coaching athletes and executives for many, many years now, and I help the athletes transition from their playing days and from their sport to what's next in their careers and their lives. And it's a very big passion of mine. And the mission of this academy is to provide all members and some of their guests the ability to not only learn a whole bunch of things that they can be useful to them down the road, whether it's things like financial literacy, how much insurance you should have, how to prepare for interviews, how to negotiate an offer, all kinds of other things like mental health awareness and nutrition and things like that, but also having the ability to get together with other people, and that feeling of community and networking is so critical, especially if you've been an athlete and you're used to being in that locker room environment. So that's why we're excited about these events, because they bring people together and people tend to really elevate each other here. I like to tell everyone that this is a collection of givers, not takers. So my guests for today, and they're fantastic gentlemen. I'm going to start off with Mike Hollis. Born and raised in Idaho, which is, for those of you who have or have not been in there, it's an absolutely, absolutely gorgeous state, a great part of the country. And I wish that it was easier to get to, because I'd spend more time there, but it's not, so I can't. But Mike Hollis, a super nice guy. He went to school in Idaho and ended up playing for the Jaguars for most of his career back in the 90s, was a Pro Bowl kicker, had 134 points one year, which is absolutely insane. But part of the reason it's insane is that's a ton of field goals, which, good for him, meant that the Jaguars couldn't score as many touchdowns. But anyway, 134 points is an amazing season. But now he's owns ProForm Kicking Academy, and he runs a business, a great entrepreneur. Next is Don Davey. And Don was born in New York, but went to school out in Wisconsin because he wanted to be really, really cold, and he was. Played for the Green Bay Packers, played for the Jaguars, and runs several different entities. He's a busy, busy guy. Parrot Head Properties, real estate investment. He's got 10 million acres somewhere and everywhere, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Also, as I mentioned earlier, has several franchises, Firehouse Subs, which he's had for a long time, and is the founder and runs Disciplined Equity Management. And we'll talk about that and financial literacy and some things about that. And then Wihan Riet, plays some rugby, can kick a ball a million miles. He's trying out for a CFL team or the CFL shortly. And my personal opinion, he should be kicking in the NFL. So maybe he will be soon, but he's currently an athlete, super nice guy. So enough of the intros, because I'm running out of gas. Mike, I'm going to let you in, and then I'm going to let Wihan in, and then also Don in. Come on in, guys. Holy crap, I talk too much. So I'm done now. Bye.
Oh, don't be Don. We love to hear you talk, Mark.
All right. Anyways, thanks, gentlemen, for being here. I really appreciate it. Very first thing I want to talk about, and I hope those intros were okay, and if they weren't, oh well. And if there are any mistakes, like Don, if you don't have 7,000 Firehouse Sub locations, you can let me know.
7,003.
Oh, shit. I forgot about the 3 that just opened last week in Perth.
Idaho.
Yeah, Idaho.
Developing the state of Idaho.
That's the next destination, isn't it? Anyways, so what, I guess the first things first, and I want to talk first, and Wihan, I'm going to get to you in a sec, but between Mike and Don, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I'm going to start with you, Mike. Tell me a little bit about when, your experience getting, finding out you're going to play in the NFL, and then that first time you walk out on the field and you're in front of all these fans, and what was that like? I mean, how did you, because I know you played college, but now you're in the NFL, you've hit the top of the game. Tell me that first day, that first time out there, how'd you feel?
Well, that was extremely exciting. My first experience in the NFL was with the Chargers. And by the way, my first live game experience in the NFL was as a player. I never actually went to a game as a fan. I know growing up in Spokane, Washington, Seattle Seahawks were the closest team to me, but they weren't that good. And I just wasn't, I didn't make it over to Seattle to watch a game. But so, coming in, from a small school, and my road to the NFL was kind of very sectional. I was at high school, obviously went to a junior college for 2 years. Because a lot of people had kind of overlooked me because of my size. We're not sure. We're not sure if he's good enough to play, at our level. And it wasn't like I was asking for Notre Dame's or Florida's or anything like that, big schools. It was just like, hey, any 4-year university or institution I'd love to play for. Never got any scholarship offers, and that was kind of my thing. Is I wanted to earn a scholarship. I wanted to feel good about earning a scholarship. I didn't want my parents paying for college. And so I just went to junior college for 2 years in Wenatchee Valley, Washington, and then went on to Idaho. So going from Wenatchee, a 2-year college, a junior college, going to University of Idaho, which was a 1AA school. So again, a little bit of a jump, not that big. More fans, more people, bigger guys, somewhat faster guys, somewhat. But then I'm telling you, when I go into the NFL, it was the size wasn't a huge difference to me from what I'd been used to seeing, like the players and their size, but the speed was just off the charts different. I remember just watching Junior Seau, my first NFL game experience in the Hall of Fame. By the way, it was the Hall of Fame game against the Falcons, I believe, Chargers Falcons in 1994. Junior Seau just lit up this dude on the sidelines. And Don, I don't know if you played in the Hall of Fame game or not, but the sidelines were not, well, it used to be. It's in a high school field. Stadium, and the sidelines, there's not a whole lot of room for the players and all the equipment and everything. So you're right there on the sideline. And Junior Seau came around the corner and just lit this dude up right in front of me, and it sounded like a car crash. I was like, oh my God, what just happened? Me as a kicker, just like, oh my, this is crazy. But it was definitely an amazing experience. It just wasn't. It was real, but it was just kind of like I didn't know how to treat it. And it was a preseason, so it wasn't like, oh, I'm the kicker now, because I was competing against John Carney. So I just knew I probably wasn't going to play, so I was just here to kind of enjoy it. So it was an awesome experience, and I definitely learned a lot.
That's great. Don, how about yourself?
I was fortunate. Although I was born in New York, I moved to Wisconsin when I was about 11 years old. So I grew up in Wisconsin cheering for the Packers, right? And I picked Wisconsin Badgers for college. I wanted to stay in state and play for my hometown team that I grew up cheering for. But then come draft day, you have no choice on draft day, right? It's one of 32 teams that are going to pick you. And sure enough, the Packers drafted me. So to this day, I was just kind of an average NFL player. I played a long time, but I still hold 2 records for the Green Bay Packers. The first is I set the record from the time a draft pick hung up the phone and the time a draft pick arrived at the stadium for the press conference, because my hometown is like literally 25 minutes away from Green Bay. So I was at home with my parents, hung up the phone, jumped in the car, and 25 minutes later, I got there before I was a 3rd-round pick. I got there before the 1st-round pick and the 2nd-round pick were able to fly in. I was able to drive up. So I got all the press in front of everybody.
That's awesome.
And I also set the record for the largest entourage, because my whole little farm town in Wisconsin, every one of them came. My brothers came, all my college buddies, my high school buddies, they all showed up too. So we're waiting for Vinnie Clark, who was our 1st-round pick from Ohio State, and Ezra Tuala was our 2nd-round pick from Oregon State. While those guys were flying in, all the media attention was on me and my family and my entourage. Everybody, who the hell is this 3rd-round pick that everybody's getting around? But to this day, I'm still the only – somebody wrote an article about this recently. There's only been 12 kids to grow up in the state of Wisconsin, to play their college career at the Badgers, and then be drafted by the Green Bay Packers. So that was a really special experience for me. I got to play 5 years up there for my hometown before signing with the Jaguars, and that was really, really a fun period of my life.
Hey, so quick question, because I and Wihan, I'm going to talk about this with you in a minute, but when I was wrapping up my college career, I played rugby, and then I played rugby for a year afterwards, under shady circumstances. But anyway, but I was playing at Colgate University, which was always frozen tundra like Wisconsin, always cold, muddy, wet, miserable, whatever. And then the next year, when I played the following year, I played in San Diego, where it was just perfect all the time, the perfect grass, perfect everything. So Don, the quick question for you is, was there a major adjustment from playing in Green Bay, home games there, to Jacksonville?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I grew up in the Midwest, and I grew up playing in the snow and the rain and the sleet. The cold never really bothered me. And I signed with the Jaguars that first year in '95. Uh, it took me literally that whole first year to adjust. I was always used to playing every play of every game, and we get out there for our first home game, and it's 1 o'clock kickoff, and it's 80 degrees, and it's humid, and I got into the second series, and I'm up my head, calling the guy, I need a break. And I'd never come off the field in my life before. So it was quite an adjustment. And like I said, it took that whole first season, and the next off season before I felt acclimated, before I could make it through a whole game.
And then, of course, you go up to Green Bay and you're like, damn, it's cold up here. That's cool. Now, Wihan, so you're, everybody should know this if they don't already. So you're in South Africa right now. So you're, give or take, I don't know, 6,000-7,000 miles away from me anyway. And you're also about 80 degrees different temperature and all that sort of thing. But tell me, I'm really curious to hear what got you started in being interested in being involved with American football after, I mean, you know, rugby is similar in some ways, but obviously completely different in others.
Man, it is a long story. There's quite a lot of context as to how one gets to that point of you know, completely transitioning to a sport that you've never played. But I would say, you know, I reached a point in my rugby playing career where I realized that perhaps this was not meant for me. I just at this point at 24, 25 years old, I kept, you know, at the exact right time or wrong time, I would pick up an injury and I would miss out on a selection. And I just, every time I would come back, it would take some time, and I would just pick up an injury again, and then I would move, and, you know, work took over. So it just kind of, rugby became something that I was doing because I loved it, and it wasn't really flourishing into a career. And I'd realized that I was really picked for teams because I had this leg that could kick the ball really, really far, and coaches really liked that, and they used it as some sort of a weapon. But outside of that, my skill set wasn't as good as, you know, your elite professional players. There were some things I was lacking in terms of speed. I wasn't the fastest guy around. You know, in terms of you know, basic skills like passing and stuff, I wasn't ambidextrous, and that's one of the biggest, you know, advantages to playing professional rugby, is being able to do everything to the right as you would to the left, or vice versa. So that was a big disadvantage, and I through this process I kind of realized that, you know, my first love was really kicking, and that's what got me into rugby. And I sort of continued playing rugby as a consequence of always wanting to kick and staying in that sort of thing. And I ended up playing my last year. I retired and then unretired again at a later stage. But at this point, I played for the University of the Northwest in South Africa. And somebody mentioned it and said that, you know, you should look into kicking American footballs, because they, you know, you could actually just kick, and that's what you're really good at. And up until that point, I didn't even know that I mean, I should have probably thought about it, but I didn't know that was a career option. I thought, wait a minute, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I'm really good at kicking. Maybe I should try that. And then this whole process started. You know, I'd never seen a football before. I'd never kicked one before. So I think the first task for me was to get a football together, you know, from somebody. It's very strange how this worked out. There was like an American missionary group working at a church at the time, and they were playing like frisbee on the field. And I had bought one of these little rubber replica balls. And at the time, I was talking to Michael Husted, not Mike Hollis at the time, and he told me that I couldn't really showcase my skill kicking this rubber synthetic ball because it wasn't the same thing. And I was kicking it anyway. And some guy that was playing frisbee on the field came up to me and asked me in this very American accent why I was kicking this ball instead of a rugby ball. And I'd explained my situation and that I'm currently in this process and I'm looking for a football. And he's like, I have two in my bag. You can have them both. And he gave those to me. And from there, you know, I made some film, and next thing you knew, I was in San Diego. And that kind of, yeah, that's kind of how it went, sort of. the short of it.
So when do we see you kicking for the we'll say the Giants, my team?
I really feel my trajectory is taking me to the CFL first, and I think it's because the NFL is a big deal, and I don't think people get workouts very easily, and I don't think they take it very lightly to bring anyone in, and to land a job as a kicker. I think it's a huge responsibility, and to do that from a country that doesn't play the sport without any college experience or anything whatsoever, as a complete rookie. I mean, it would take an absolute miracle to be able to do that. So I feel going to the CFL first, I have a better chance through their global scouting program to land a job there, and build some sort of a resume, which I can then at a later stage transfer to the NFL if that's in the plans. I can only control what I can, but that seems to be a smarter way to do this, I suppose.
So make all your kicks. That's all. That should be easy enough. But that's a great story, though. That's awesome. And I love hearing stories of, obviously, from my case, in my background, I talk about transition from sport to business or sport to something else. But obviously, in your case, you've gone from one sport to another, and that is obviously not an easy thing to do. So, gentlemen, looping back around again a little bit, Mike, tell me what you think, because look, it takes a certain amount of sort of nerves of steel or whatever it is to kick the game is on the line, and it's up to you to make that field goal to win the game, that sort of thing. And I think some people, wonder what's going through a kicker's mind when they're lining up for that kick. And some kickers are visualization, and and other kickers like, hey, whatever, this is cool. Like, tell me what you think that athletic mindset is, and especially in your case, to be able to focus on that and making that kick.
Yeah, I treat kicking a little different mentally, actually both physically and mentally. But with regards to the mental process of kicking, if you get good enough with your technique, and you can get good enough at trusting that good technique,
right,
you don't have to rely on mental imagery. I never had any sports psychologist. I never had anybody in my ears ever talking to me about kicking or how to prepare for a game. I never was offered that help. I never asked for that help. I was just focused on my technique. And if you can trust that technique and allow that technique to do more of the work than your athletic ability, then you're on the right track. And that's the thing too, that most kids, that the difference between kickers that are really, really good and kickers that are not very good, are specifically in the games is because of that exact process. They treat games differently than they do when they're kicking on their own. They can kick the crap out of the ball on their own. I've seen guys kicking with them just like, wow, I'd be kicking so much better than me. But in a game, they're not so much better than me. And a lot of it has to do with just the pressure they put on themselves and trying so hard to make the kick. I've always been a fan, and Don, Brian Barker gave me this advice years ago. He said, Mike, don't ever think you have to do anything different on game day than you do in the day of practice. Like, he pointed at the field and said, we kick balls all day long over that field over there. On game day, when we're in the stadium here, there's nothing different. The field is the same. The goalposts are still the same. They're 18.6, and the field's 100 yards long. It's 54 yards wide. Everything is the same. It might appear a little bit different because now there's fans and it just looks different, but there's nothing physically different about the field. So why should you do anything different? And I was like, man, that's really good. And that has a lot to do with trusting the form. Like, why would I change my form on game day? That makes no sense to me at all. But subconsciously, guys do that when they get all uptight and they put too much pressure on trying so hard to make the kick that they end up second guessing themselves and doing things they don't normally do. So that's kind of the mindset that I would have on game day.
That's great. Hey, before we go much further, just a quick reminder: if any of you have questions that you want to ask these gentlemen, please make sure you put it in the Q&A section on the far right on your screen, and then I can bring you in to ask those questions in a few minutes. All right, so Don, over to you. Mike talked about technique, and I think the casual football fan will say that, oh, well, gee, these guys on the offensive and defensive line, they're just pushing each other. And they don't understand necessarily, that there's a tremendous amount of technique and skill set involved in each position. But tell me a little bit about how, I mean, when you got playing, how critical was technique to you, especially as you went and played in the NFL? And is that what sort of kept you in the game a long time, do you think, or was it something else?
Yeah, that's quite honestly, that's a big difference maker in the NFL. You know, everybody in the NFL is talented, right? I mean, they're big, they're strong, they're fast. You don't get to the NFL and make a 53-man roster unless you have, you know, a certain level of physical gifts. And what separates, you know, the good from the great across the board, a lot of times is technique. And so I spent a lot of time on that. Like I said, I'm not being modest. I was just kind of an average athlete. You know, I used to look around the locker room or in the meeting rooms in training camp every year and say, you know, that guy's more talented than me. That guy's more talented than me. That guy's bigger, stronger, faster than me. And, you know, I'd probably be the least physically gifted guy in the room. But what I made it up for is number hard work and effort, right? I was always the hardest working guy on the practice field and on the field. I was a smart guy, so I could play every position, and every team needs a guy like that, right? You think about as a business, you look at the NFL, you're limited to a 53-man roster, only 47 active on game day. So if you got a guy that can play 4 different positions, that takes the place of maybe 2 of those roster spots or 3 of those roster spots, not only activating guys on game day, but you might go short a defensive lineman. Like some of the teams I was on, we only carried 5 or 6 defensive linemen, where other teams would carry 7 or 8, which enabled us to keep an extra receiver, right? Or an extra third quarterback or an extra linebacker, which helped us out in positions where we weren't as strong. And kind of to piggyback on what Mike said, you know, would come game day, you know, it was, to me, the whole deal was, game day was the fun part, right? If you put the work in, right? If you start, I always say, you know, you come Sunday on the game day and the cheerleaders are out and there's 80,000 people in the stands and it's Monday Night Football. Everybody wants to win on game day, right? But the real champions are, you know, back in February when you were did you put the work in back in February in the weight room at 4:30 in the morning? You know, did you do those extra sprints after the workout was done and everybody went in the locker room? And then during minicamp, did you give it your all? And then during the off season, during summer, you know, were you there for all the OTAs and showing up and getting treatment and doing the stretches and doing everything you had to do? And did you earn it during training camp and during the week leading up to the game? You know, I said the games aren't won on Sundays. The games are won back in February, March, and April. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during the week, when are you doing your film study and are you studying the guy you're playing against? And do you know the tendencies? And even during the course of the game, are you picking up the line calls? You know, we kind of speak in code. It's kind of like spy espionage back and forth, trying to translate what the offensive lineman's calls, what that actually means, what the quarterback's audibles are, picking that up. And then once you pick it up, you can't let them know that you know it, because once they know you know it, they'll change it to something else, and then you got to start all over again. So and then technique is a part of that too. You know, it's like, if everybody's big and strong and fast, you know, who is it that mastered the rip move or the swim technique or, you know, your slant technique coming under? Who mastered those techniques? Everybody's good at them. Who got really, really great at the precision details of those type things? So
that's great.
In anything, it's the same in business. It's the same in anything. And it's the same in schoolwork, where it's like, who's willing to do those little things above and beyond to get that extra edge to compete at the highest level.
That's such a great segue into, I mean, the whole concept of translating athletic skill set and mindset into business success. And you know, I think that's something that you've certainly leveraged over the course of time to do that sort of thing. We'll touch on that in a second, but Wihan, first, I want to come to you real quick to say, you know, to ask, and I'm going to follow up with that whole technique thing, continuing with this whole notion that, did you find that there was a different or a dramatically different technique to kicking a football versus a rugby ball, or not necessarily? Are you still just swinging as hard as you can, or what's?
No, definitely a huge difference. You know, kicking a rugby ball is, I mean, almost anybody can do it, because the ball is made out of a very soft rubber material. You can use a tee, you know, and that's probably the biggest fundamental difference, is kicking off a tee, because it makes up for the things that you're lacking in your body position, plant foot location, separation, you know, momentum, all that stuff. You can get away with not doing or not being very precise with those things because your ball is elevated. That takes care of your trajectory for you. And you can take an approach as long as you want. You've also got no rush and the ball is also there when you're lining up. So you have a exact reference point. You're not expecting a snap and a hold and trying to mentally process that. So it's a step up. And I would say that kicking, people would probably be angry at me if I say this, but it's the ultimate kicking sport if it comes down to precision and technique. So to answer your question, yeah, massive difference. Took a lot of hard work and training and drill work and mental, different mental processes and experimentation to kind of figure it out, as I had tons of bad muscle memory from the luxury of kicking rugby balls all my life, if that makes sense.
Oh, of course it does. And because look, I think it's all about having the capability to know how to pivot, whether it's in sport or in business. And it's that's sometimes the big challenge, is how to know and when to know how to do that and when to do that. So, I guess, one thing I want to bring up is that each of you have attained success in your sport, and two of you guys managed to make it into the NFL at the pinnacle of your sport. You played for several years. And what's interesting is that, Don, you mentioned a minute ago that you're like, well, I'm just I was an average player and that sort of thing. And what I want to mention to an extent is that I think most people outside of, let's say, football or the sport, they say, oh my God, this guy, he's the top 1% of, and that sort of thing. But I also want to say that, when you're in it, you don't necessarily see yourself as the top 1%. You're saying, man, I'm just grinding. I'm working hard, and I'm beating out these other people because they're probably not working as hard. And some of them are physically more superior, as you said, Don, a minute ago. But I want everybody to know that everybody can be at that top level. Everybody can be at the top 1% of what they're doing. It's a question of, the tenacity and the grit and moving forward and constantly learning. But also it's really about, the networking thing too, and knowing the right people and having the right conversations and really knowing how to, for example, I think you gentlemen, Mike and Don, when you were playing, I'm guessing you also knew that to become better, you had to learn from the coaches. You had to ask questions. You had to be more involved than maybe some of your teammates were. I mean, is that something? Mike, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's again, that separates the drive to get to the NFL is what, for me specifically, continued. I mean, getting to the NFL was a challenge. Once I got there, that challenge was done. They asked me how excited or how long I was excited to make the NFL. About 10 seconds. I was like, oh, well, what do I do now? Now I made it, so now I got to work harder, maintain, get better, and just kind of. So yeah, you're carrying those things that you've relied on this whole time trying to make it in the NFL. Once you get there, you're now the pressure's on even more, because now it's your job, and now people relying on you. It's not just you relying on you to make it in the NFL. You got your teammates, you got the city, you got your coaches, you got the media. Everyone's kind of looking at you, and so it changes dramatically at that point. So just the matter of maintaining that sort of mentality that you had while getting to the NFL, and we're trying to be perfectionists, even though my kicking coach specifically. One of our clients had asked him, like, how many perfect kicks did Mike have in the NFL? Because they were on the subject of that. And Jim, my coach, told the client, he said, well, I think about 2. I think Mike had about 2. And I said, and I was there. The kid had told me that. And I was working with the kid later on. And Jim was there the other time. And I said, and the kid said that to me. He said, well, you only had 2 perfect kicks in your NFL career. And I looked at Jim. I said, Jim, just 2? He goes, well, maybe 3, but yeah, 2 for sure. I'm like, what? But I made a bunch. But that was his point, is that as close you're striving for that perfection, and as close as you can come to that perfection, even if you still are not perfect, you're still going to make kicks. So, and Don's the same sort of mentality is, you want to play in the NFL, you want to play at the highest level of football in the world, you got to work for it. You got to create a certain structure and be extremely disciplined, not only to get to that level, but even more so to maintain that level.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And don't get me wrong. I was blessed with enough athletic ability. There's only 1,500 people in the world that could play in the NFL out of 7 billion. Okay, so it's a pretty elite group, and I was good enough to play in that sandbox. But what I saw amongst that group of 1,500, I was probably in the lower quartile, that's for sure. Maybe the bottom decile of God-given talent. But again, I think another great lesson is that finding a way. The NFL isn't all Junior Seau and Deion Sanders and Aaron Rodgers. The bulk of the NFL, the majority of the NFL, was guys like me. And if I wasn't as gifted physically, okay, what could I bring to the table that would help offset that, right? And that was my work ethic, right? And that was my intelligence, and that was my ability and willingness to play multiple positions, my ability and willingness to work out in the off season so that I never got hurt. I was like the Rock. I never missed a game. I never missed a practice. And that's valuable, right? I tell my employees, half the game is showing up. A lot of people can't even show up to work consistently, right? Anybody can do it one day or 1 week or 1 month. But can your boss or your partner or whoever it is, can they count on you to be there day in, day out, week in, year out consistently, over the course of your career? And if you do that, you build this reputation that, hey, you know what? He's not the smartest guy. He's not this, he's not that, but hell, we can count on him. And there's a place for people like that in every single organization across the board. And what's funny is that you talk about translating those skills elsewhere. Like I said, I was lucky enough to play in that NFL sandbox. When I got out of the NFL, when it came to competing in the business world, I mean, I was a total, you talk about the bottom decile. I mean, this is the bottom. I had no experience whatsoever in the real world business world. And now all of a sudden you're competing against the Bill Gates and the Warren Buffetts of the world. I mean, those guys were in their own little sandbox that I had no business playing in. But my approach was exactly the same. It's like, listen, I'm going to learn as much as I can. I'm going to work my ass off. I'm going to talk and network with people and figure this thing out and just get better and better and better. And ironically, the same thing with Ironman. My second career or my hobby is these Ironman things that I do. I mean, I was big, I was strong, I was fast. From the day I played football in kindergarten, I was good. I was awful at Ironman. I literally almost drowned in my first sprint triathlon. I got 50 yards in the swim, and I had to flip on my back just to get to the bottom of the ocean. But again, as that competitiveness kicked in, it's like, all right, so what do I need to do to get to the level where I can someday compete in the Ironman World Championships in Kona? And it was that was a 10-year journey, but it was the same approach. Put my head down. Let's learn as much as I can. Let me work as hard as I can. And bit by bit, let me take my strengths, something I'm not built for this sport, but what can I bring to the table to get good at this sport as well, just like I did in business and just like I did in football. So the approach to me has been exactly the same.
Hey, so Vihan, I'm sorry, I went with the nickname.
He is fine.
Cool. So with all that said, Don just mentioned something really important about the network and developing it. Now you're still playing, you're an athlete. Are you starting to see yourself from your perspective as you continue through your athletic career, the importance of networking and getting to know other people? Are you still focused on just, the people in your world, or have you started to kind of open up a little bit?
Well, yeah, definitely, because I think I would not have gotten as far as any sort of tryout or workout if it wasn't for other people. I think it's one of the most important things, I think, in not just in this industry, but in anything, is having other people believe in you. If you have other people believe in you, then there's a lot more doors that open for you. So it's definitely important. It's impossible to do this on your own. It's just not possible. And I've been very lucky and blessed with having Mike as a coach and sort of a guide along this way, especially someone that's been through all this stuff. It's invaluable to have somebody like that coach and guide you. So yeah, I think the easiest way to answer your question is yes. Yeah, definitely.
Good, because that's invariably virtually every athlete I speak to after they've retired, they say their one regret or one of their big regrets was not doing more of the development of relationships with other people that can help them down the road. It's been, they spend a lot of time either hanging out with their friends or the fans or whatever it is, and not necessarily making business relationships or whatever might be going forward. So I think it's wonderful that you're doing that, and please continue to do that. Mike, how about you yourself? When you were playing, did you find that you had time to meet some other people, or not necessarily? What was it like?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a kicker. I had plenty of time, right, Don? No, really. I had lots of time. Don had mentioned in previous conversations with us, but we as Jaguars, Tom Coughlin made us, he put an addendum in our contract that made us have to do 3 or 4 different paid or not appearances in the off season or during the season, I think, but they were required. We had to do these appearances. So that was just his way of saying, get out in the community. Where Jacksonville's a small community anyway. So right. Just more exposure to, getting us out there in the community and just showing that we're real people and nice. And again, it's an opportunity to again, I wasn't real keen on, or not really keen on, I really didn't have the awareness really, because I was one of those that kind of thought that I was going to kick forever. Right. Which the kicker's career would last a little bit longer than the normal athlete because of injuries and so forth. But I kind of figured that I was going to play a long time, and yeah, it's no big deal. I don't need to really know these people, but I'm a nice guy anyway, so I love meeting people and talking to people. But when I retired, that was quickly one of the biggest things that slapped me in the face. Say, listen, now I got to network, and I got to meet people, and I got to be in the real world. And like Don was saying, and I learned this from Don years ago, he said, the longer you play in the NFL, the longer you're out of what your peers in college are doing now, so you played 9, 10, 12, 15 years in the NFL, you're 15 years away from what you would have been doing had you not played football. You'd be in the real world in your career and all that. You're basically starting all over at that point. So making connections with people is extremely important. And even now with the Jaguars, we have a Jaguar ambassador group, and part of our not really a job. I mean, we get to go to games and stuff, but part of our responsibilities are to go do suite visits. So clearly we're going around to these suites where these, pretty important people are at, and we're meeting people, and we're passing out our cards, and it's a perfect opportunity to meet people and stay engaged in the community. And I just like to meet people in general, just to see what's out there and see what people are doing. And if in fact I do maybe need some help sometime, I know I can look at my list of business cards and I remember meeting Mr. John over here, and I can relate to them and reach out to them. So I think it's extremely important to have that idea in the repertoire of getting guys and people in general to that list of network of people that you've accumulated and use that to your benefit. And of course they're going to use you too, not in a bad way, but there's going to be a lot of people who are going to ask things from you. Even as a retired guy, we still get a lot of requests for things and different stuff because of who we are and the level of reputation we have in the city and in community, whatever. But it's always an ongoing thing. So I enjoy being around people, and I'm telling you, if you don't enjoy being around people, it's going to be a challenge for you to network and be successful, and especially if you're an entrepreneur. So it can be challenging, but you got to make the best of it.
That's really good. So Don, I'm going to ask you something in a second, but when I ask that, we're also going to bring in Matt and David to just ask their questions real quickly. And when gentlemen, when you come in to ask, just try to stick to your question and not into a long discussion about things, if you could. But Don, you're a guy you've got several entities that are in the works that keep you busy. I think most of your time is spent with discipline equity management, but I think you've also got some real estate stuff going. You've got the Firehouse subs and so forth. But obviously, you're somebody that understands the importance of networking and meeting people and developing relationships. But tell me, was that something that you started doing even back when you were in your 20s and the early 30s and so forth, or did it develop over time? Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's funny. Again, I go back to it's amazing looking back on it. It all started with a mindset, right? And like I said, without being self-depreciated, I knew I wasn't the most talented NFL guy. And so I knew my NFL career could end at any time. You could be the most talented guy in the NFL, and you can blow a knee and be done your first day of training camp, right?
Right.
So we call it not for long for a reason. Is that it's hard to last a long time in the NFL, or the odds are certainly stacked against you. And so I tell people my life after the NFL began on draft day, right? On draft day, it's like, all right, I'm kind of in fantasy world. I made it to the NFL. But, every minute from then forward of my NFL career, I knew it could end at any time. So that drove a couple decisions. Number one, I wanted to save and invest every single penny, right? On a personal level, I never intended to do this for anybody else, but just on a personal level, hey, if I blow out my knee in year 2, 3, 4, 5, or 10, whatever it is, I want to save and invest everything I can between now and then so that maybe I can set myself and my family up for life. And then the other thing is that, well, hey, if I approach this, that it can end at any day. I used to talk to the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts and the schools and the churches and the YMCA and the Knights of Columbus and whatever. I would do all those public appearances and golf outings and dinners and events, autograph sessions for the same reason, right? It's like, let me start building a network outside of the NFL so that when I blow my knee out or when I get a concussion or when I'm just not good enough, maybe that'll help me transition into my next career. Now, ironically, I told the story yesterday that one of those golf outings I played at when I was my first year with the Jags in '95, I was paired with the founders of Firehouse Subs. They were two young entrepreneurs who just opened their first restaurant, begged, borrowed, and stole $25,000 on their mother-in-law's credit card to open the first one. And I met them at that point, and we just kind of hit it off, and we talked about it. And I was always kind of an entrepreneur at heart, so I really admired what they were going through. By the time I retired from the Jags, they had opened 20 of these things in Jacksonville. And I said, well, what's next? And they're like, well, we're going to start franchising. And that led to my whole Firehouse Subs companies that I have now. I opened one franchise in Orlando, and that went well. And I leveraged that we now have 13 in Orlando, 21 up in Wisconsin. And now there's 1,500 Firehouse Subs around the world that these guys have grown this brand to. And it's the same so me personally take care of myself on the wealth management side. And I learned that business inside and out. And then when I got out of the NFL, it was kind of a natural fit to start helping some of my NFL teammates do the same thing that I did and help them with their finances and help them launch a second career, help them look into franchising or invest in real estate, whatever. So it's but it all started with that mindset that, hey, you know what, this is great. It's awesome. I loved every second I was in the NFL, but I always approached it that, man, this is a very fragile, delicate situation someone could pull the rug out from underneath me at any time. And so from the day I was drafted, it was, okay, let me put the building blocks in place to kind of build at least the infrastructure so that I can have a successful post-NFL career as well.
That's a great, and that, look, I love that story when we were chatting yesterday about how you got in with Firehouse Subs, but that's how this all happens, right? It all happens when you take advantage of a situation that's presented to you. You're at a door and you walk through it and you don't worry about what's on the other side. You just go deep in. So I think that's fantastic. All right. So look, I'm going to bring in Matt first. Matt, I'm going to have you come in and ask your question. If you could, why don't you come on in and then we can ask a couple of questions, then head back to the tables for a bit. So Matt, come on in if you're still kicking around. Let's see. Did I do that right? I did. Hey, Matt, come on in. Maybe he's not active. So listen, while we're waiting on Matt, I'm going to have, hey, David, why don't you come on in and ask your question now? This does work, by the way, I promise. Let's see. Well, tell you what, while we're waiting, I'll just go ahead and ask Matt's question. Matt's saying it's Women's History Month now. Any opinion on Sarah Fuller and her kicking with Vandy and where that's going to lead? I guess, Mike, we'll start with you.
I think it's a great thing. I mean, she definitely wasn't the first, not to put any discredit for what she did. There's been other women. Actually, Jules Harshbarger was one of the first who played in Chicago, actually. Mm-hmm. Some indoor football teams and some pro, semi-pro teams out there. But I think it's awesome. She's a soccer player, so she's able to at least kick, football. But it's great to see that they're an opportunity for women to be out there on the field. And that's a great question, because another thing that I'd like to promote really is we're actually in Jacksonville, we're doing a Laces Out Foundation. It's a kicking camp for all women. So we're providing a camp here in Jacksonville. It's lacesout.com. lacesoutfoundation.com, but that's it's a camp we're going to provide for all women kickers, punters, and snappers. So, but I think it's an awesome opportunity for women to have exposure. And people have asked me, like, hey, will you ever see a female kicker in the NFL? And I've got to be honest, it was very difficult for me to make it. And there's a lot of guys in line, and I'm not saying guys that guys physically just are probably stronger than women, and so no disrespect in that manner, but it's just going to be very difficult to have that happen. But it's awesome to see at that level. Even Vanderbilt is such a big school, having a woman kicker. I think that's an awesome way to promote women athletes and women's sports.
Well, absolutely, and I think what's happening is that if anything, it's allowing it's giving women the opportunity to understand that they can make it, they can keep on, whether it's breaking glass ceilings, whatever the term is, but keep on progressing. And also, I think, increases the interest in the NFL or in football when you see something like that happen amongst women. So even though they may not say, gee, I want to go out and kick like Sarah Fuller, they may say, hey, but this is kind of cool. Look at this sport. Now I have a greater appreciation for it. So that's great.
And on top of that, they can actually play on women's teams now too. So if
Right.
you had a female watching that game and seeing a female kick for Vanderbilt, that might jog a little thing in their mind, like, I can kick a football, and maybe I should try out for the local women's team or something. So it gives an opportunity, exposure. It adds credibility to women's sports in general. So I think it's a great thing.
I saw a study once that it was something like 75% of Division I girl athletes either grew up with big brothers or grew up playing against the boys, right? And I've got 5 daughters, and they all played flag football, and I was the coach of flag football. And most of the teams that we played, this is whatever, 6, 7, 8-year-old, 10-year-old boys and girls. It was primarily a boys' league, right? And some of the teams had one of the guys' little sister as the one token girl on the team. She never played. She sat, and they put her in for the last play of the game, and that was it. Well, our team, I got all my NFL buddies and got our daughters together, right? And so our girls they're big, they're strong, they're fast. And we had all girls, maybe 1 or 2 boys on the team. And we go out there for warm-ups, and I would tell the girls, hey, listen, you know what? I want you to just giggle, laugh, pull each other's ponytail. Every ball I throw you, I want you to drop and just, laugh and giggle the whole way in pregame warm-up. And we'd be doing that, and you see the boys on the sidelines, oh, man, we got to play the girls this week. It's like we're going to kill them. And then we get out there, and we do, like, play-action pass, and my daughter would streak down the sideline, and we'd throw, like, a 60-yard bomb, and they'd be like, holy man, these girls can play. But my approach with the girls is that, some of the other coaches would say, well, you know what, we'll give you 5 downs instead of 4 downs, whatever. I said, no. I said, girls, we're going to line up head-to-head against these boys, and we're going to kick their butts. I mean, that was the approach that we took to get it. And our best year, we ended up making it to the Super Bowl of the championship. We lost in the championship game, but we were the second best team in the whole league across the board. So I do think for young girls, it's important that, hey, listen, adopt the mindset that, hey, anything the boys can do, we can do every bit as good as well. And, there's examples of that at Division I level and at the pro level as well, too. And it may not always be the case. Like, Mike, I don't know if we'll ever see a female NFL kicker, but adopting that mindset at a young age with the girls is very important. And by the way, it's the same in school. I've had 3 valedictorians in my family, these girls. I'm like, listen, you're going head-to-head against the boys in the classroom, on the basketball court, in the flag football field, whatever it is. There's nothing they can do that you guys can't do every bit as well, if not better.
That's great. That's cool. Well, listen, I'm going to bring Dave in to ask his question. Come on in, Dave. He's got it figured out now, I think. So come join us here. And couldn't agree with you more, Don. That was really well stated. Here we go.
Hi, Mark. Thanks. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you taking the time. I guess I did have a second question for you, Don, about handling mechanical engineering while playing football. And obviously, I guess I'll start with that. But just given, obviously, you're a bright guy and you come to the table with some tools that a lot of guys don't have. So I'd be curious how you handled that, and also how do you get guys to think about things that you were thinking about at the beginning of your career that a lot of guys, either don't have the bandwidth to, or just don't have that perspective.
Yeah. I appreciate the question. That's I get that one a lot as well. I mean, I go back to, it's the same thing. The mindset is that, I was a pretty good high school football player and started getting recruited. But even college, your college career can end at any sport, right? At any time, right? And so I picked my college. I picked Wisconsin because they had one of the best engineering programs in the country. And I knew that education would stay with me forever, no matter what happened to my body on the football field. And so I truly went as a student first. And in fact, I had to argue with the head coach all of my freshman year about taking a full engineering schedule. Not only did I want to take engineering, I wanted to graduate in 4 years. I didn't want to stick around for a fifth year afterwards. I ended up going to grad school because I was redshirted. So I just took that approach too. Listen, I'm here as a student. If I'm good enough and lucky enough to play football during this time, that's great. But I always made that my priority. And fortunately for me, Wisconsin really allowed me to do that. I had a daughter play volleyball at the University of Miami. It wasn't the same mindset there, but I had to miss practice sometimes because of a computer lab, right? And I had to miss some off-season workouts because the only time my mechanics lab was offered was Tuesday, Thursday at 8 a.m. And so, but the coaches were very forgiving. They understood it, and they truly did treat us as students first, and enabled me to juggle all those, 16, 18, 20 credits a semester and playing D1 football the whole time. And as far as, with the young pros and the rookies, I guess same message with them. It's like, hey, listen, congratulations, you made it to the NFL. You're at the top. You're at the top, 0.01% of the world population that gets to play in this NFL sandbox. Enjoy every minute of it. But from day one, start putting the pieces in place for a successful life after football. And hopefully you do play 15 years and you never need a second career and you make $100 million and you save it and invest well. But just in case that doesn't happen, let's network and let's finish your degree and let's, start acquiring some real world business skills during the off season so to equip yourself for a successful transition.
What's your second question? You're going to ask Wihan something, I think, right? Or did you want to? You're saying, go ahead. Well, anyways, yeah.
Wouldn't turn on.
Okay.
It's on.
We're good. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm sorry to hijack it, Mark.
Sorry.
Yeah, so actually to Mike and Wihan, I watched a little video there. You can kick a ball a ton. What's it going to take for you to get to the next level?
Luck.
I would say an opportunity. Just get him there.
Yeah, maybe the right opportunity, I suppose. I think a lot of this stuff, and maybe Mike and Don would agree with me. I think a lot of it is being in the right place at the right time. With the right coach and just getting the right opportunity, I suppose. So, I think, like I said earlier, I think my first step in the right direction would be to kick for a CFL team. I think their global pathway is a lot more forgiving, so to speak. So that's a good opportunity to get my foot in the door. And I think once my foot is in the door, don't mind the pun, but once my foot's in the door, then it's gonna be a lot easier. If I'm successful, it's gonna be a lot easier to build on that than it's also very expensive, from South Africa to fly out to the States for a tryout that might happen or might not happen. And as you guys know, Don and Mike, this industry is so fast paced. One day you're relevant, the next day you're not. So it takes careful planning. And I think also, I'm not 22 anymore, so I need to do this the right way. I need to do it. So I don't have any time to waste. So I'm although I say that and I'm waiting for the right opportunity, it's just I've experienced how you can waste your time chasing dreams and ghosts, I suppose. So yeah, that's my answer.
Oh, that's great.
If I was to add a little bit more to that, I'd say, with Wihan, if the opportunity presents itself for like a workout or things like that, one thing that really is needs to be known is when you're working out for these teams, when you have opportunities to work out, you have to understand that these coaches and these scouts that are out there watching you perform, they're in the business of scratching names off lists. That's all they do is they have a list of names and lists of people that they're looking at. And if you come up and you don't perform well, they're just going to scratch your name off and they don't want to see you again. So I think part of my success was the opportunities that I had, the workouts that I had. And I worked out for plenty of teams before I got on with the Jaguars and even with the Chargers. And I never had a really bad workout. All my workouts were pretty good. And so if you have a bad workout or if you're impatient and you want to get in like now and you're not ready physically, that's why some guys are so gung-ho about getting these workouts. I'm like, just wait. You're not really ready yet. The last thing we want you to do is get your name scratched off a list. So that's something that some people don't realize. And it's very important to realize that.
Yeah, Mike, you're absolutely right. I've in hindsight, if I look back years ago, 2015, I had that workout with the Chargers, and I was by far not even close to the best in my field, and that's something I would have commented on the Sarah Fuller thing. If she worked out and competed for the job and all that stuff, then it's all good. Like then it's fair game for everybody. But I felt like maybe I got an opportunity with the Chargers because I was an interesting story. I came from Africa. I played rugby, and it wasn't really about my skill set at the time. I had no idea about kicking footballs. I just had a leg that moved really fast, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But if I look back at that film and I compare it to now, I mean, if I had that opportunity now, I think things would have gone a lot differently. And, I probably ruined a lot of chances that I had because I was, like Mike said, I was impatient at the time. I was young, I was immature, and I looked at the NFL as this like imagine this, like I could be this cool dude kicking the NFL. Like, oh, how easy would that be, And now it's for me, it's a lot more. It's a lot less of a dream now than what it is more of a actual ability for me to do this, because I put literally 6 years into working on this craft and things that has taught me over the past couple of years. And it seems crazy that you could work for 6 years on a kicking technique, but there's a lot more detail that goes into it. And right, when I say right opportunity, I also mean by you being in the right state of mind with your abilities and your techniques and stuff, and having that under control. And yeah, I think life kind of works like that. Those doors will open when they do, and when they do, they should be open. I suppose they're meant to be open. So yeah, I'm patient. So.
That's great. Awesome. That's great. Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Yeah. So, gentlemen, we're going to wrap this part of things up now and go back to the tables and just have a chance to chat with some of the other folks. But thanks so much I really appreciate your time today. And this has all been really fascinating. And quite frankly, I could probably go on for another 2 or 3 hours with you guys. So much of an interesting perspective and some great lessons that you've all learned. And I think you can all sort of share your experiences with everybody else here. So thanks again for that. I really appreciate it. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, obviously feel free to ask these gentlemen when we bounce back. But what do you guys in general think of this whole this platform here?
I think it's cool. I like it. It's different. You can go to different tables and different things, and it's not just like a straight platform where you can't really have much option.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to network and for to ask some of those questions. We've all got different experiences, and hopefully everybody can take a little bit from each of our stories and apply it to their own situation. And hopefully it's been helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like the fact that it's you're sort of steering the ship, so it's not just people are just kind of swimming around in this ocean of information. So
well,
thank you as well, Mark.
Just quick comment, V, to you, and I see it more on the other end of things. Like whether you're trying to break into the pro sport or you're at the end of your career and you've maybe been cut and you don't know if your career is over or not. I see a lot of guys on that end of things. I think your default should be like, hey, listen, I want everybody to make it in the NFL or the NBA or the Major League Baseball, whatever it is. The odds are against it, right? For some things that are just completely out of your control. So just while you're trying to break into the CFL or the NFL, whatever, develop those, do the networking thing, right? Finish your degree, take an accounting class, whatever it is, start preparing yourself for life after. Because even if you do make it in the NFL, you're still going to need those skills at some point down the road. So there's no reason you can't do both. And like I say, I see a lot of NFL guys they get cut year 7. Well, I'll get picked up again next year. And then next year comes and they don't get it. It's like, well, okay, I'm going to train and work out. And maybe next year I'll get picked up with a team. I was like, listen, well, that's great. But there's no reason you can't finish your degree, take a business class, get a master's, do networking, do an internship, do something while you're lifting weights and running and training and trying to break back into the NFL. So numbers, I'm a mathematician. The odds are against pro sports in general. So just accept that as your default and say, look, I got a plan for my real life. And if this NFL or pro sports things happens, that's kind of a bonus.
That's fantastic advice. A great way to end it. Thanks, gentlemen. Again, we're going to bounce back to the other spot there, but I, again, really appreciate your time today. Thank you. Thanks for being part of the Clubroom event today. It's been great having you on board. Check out all the resources available to the Win Again Academy. Go to the website, markmoyer.com, and you'll see all the previous events, podcast episodes, articles, and so much more. Check it out. And look, if you're an athlete, if you're an entrepreneur and a founder or an executive looking to elevate your game and really take your business and your career to a whole new level, consider becoming a Win Again Academy member. We'd love to have you on board because you get access 24/7 to an incredible Slack community of other members where you can really elevate your network and meet some really impressive people. You'll also get a personalized copy of my book, Win Again, the job search handbook for athletes and non-athletes looking to really transform their life and their career. You'll also get seamless entry into the Clubroom events. And these events are absolutely amazing. Table-to-table networking, conversations with everybody at your own pace. It really is fun, but also incredibly great for your network. You've got to check those out. You'll also get discounts to future VIP events that we've got lined up. So consider joining, be a part of this community, be a part of that Slack channel. Come to these events. You'll meet some amazing people. Go to markmoyer.com/join-today. And take advantage of all the things that you have to offer for an incredibly, incredibly great price. Check it out. We'd love to see you there and see you in the Clubroom soon. Thanks.